Hello, and welcome back to Sinister Seminar. I'm your host, Richard Berwin, and this is a History of Horror podcast, where today we will be discussing Alejandro Jodorowsky's 1989 film, Sangre. If you haven't already, please check out the first episode where we explored the concept of the ancient Greek chorus, as it will provide a lot of context and language that I will be using in the upcoming analysis of this film. There will be spoilers, so proceed with caution, and make sure to check out the show notes for any and all content warnings. With all that being said, class is in session. Hello, it's me. It's your host, Richard. I'm very excited to be talking about today's film. It is one that has stuck with me for a while, and one that I am amazed, that I truly am amazed by the more time I get to sit with it. But I am also very excited for another reason, because in this episode, we will have our very first guest on this podcast. So everyone, please welcome my friend Charlotte Slivka. Hi, Charlotte.
Hey.
Welcome to the podcast. I have a question for you.
Okay.
If you could do any circus act, what would you do?
Oh, silks.
Silks. Ooh.
Yeah. But also, before silks were a thing, I probably would have said, trapeze. Either way, I want to be in the air. I want it to be precarious. I want to be swinging around. Actually, probably trapeze. Yeah.
I could so see that for you. I think that's
Yeah.
amazing.
As a little girl, I loved the outfits. Of course, everything begins with a good outfit.
Everything begins with a good outfit. Love the outfit. They're so sparkly.
So sparkly and the tights and the ballet slippers, and like the little frills. And then like swinging around on the trapeze, like that looks so much fun.
I can so imagine you doing that. I think for me, I would want to be a strong man.
Ooh, I can
And
see
you
that
know,
too. Another
right?
outfit.
Another great outfit, which, I did a lot of research, like the strong man in itself has a long history when it comes to queerness that I'm not going to get into right now, including down to like the fig leaf. So I would love to do like a strongman bit,
Mhm.
but that is beside the point. Once again, hello, welcome to the podcast. Feel free to introduce yourself and what you do.
Yeah, so I'm Charlotte Slivka, sometimes known as Charlotte Plum, depending on where you will find me on the interwebs. I am the editor-in-chief of Lit Magazine. I'm many things, but that I'm that today. And and I'm a writer, or I try to be a writer, or at least I write. I write things. And um and I really love the hybrid section of Lit. Like I'm all about hybrid just because I'm really interested in the weirdness of living and the weirdness of how weird genre can get. I'm also the library manager at Morbid Anatomy Library and gift shop. Speaking of weird things and how weird things can get. Let's see, what else can I say about myself? I live in Brooklyn, New York native. I have some plants, and I have a good friend named Richard.
That's me. And I do get to see, this is a audio medium, but I do get to see your beautiful plant behind you. It is is that an aloe vera?
Sure is. It got big, huh?
That is a giant aloe vera. I've never seen an aloe vera so big.
Yeah,
Uh,
it's been precarious. It's had a very precarious life in my apartment, I thought it was a goner a few times, but it hangs in there. It's a true New Yorker.
True New Yorker. But speaking of weird, precarious, and hanging in there, I guess we should get into Santa Sangre.
Yeah, let's do it.
Let's do it. So I asked you to be on this specific episode. I actually forced you to be on this episode, um, because we had a discussion about Hodorowski, and you brought up that you had just bought his tarot book. Can you talk more about that?
Yeah, I bought his tarot book actually because I was reading, let's see what I was reading about Leonora Carrington, and somehow Jodorowsky like came up in that reading. And I thought to myself, well, that's an interesting juxtaposition of people like Alejandro Jodorowsky and Leonora Carrington hanging out in the 50s. Like that sounds pretty cool. And I'm like, I really can't remember what it was I was reading. But then I was like, I had to follow up on Jodorowsky and tarot because I guess I should have realized that Jodorowsky was like, I knew he was into the occult. I just didn't know he was like such an astute follower of tarot. And that is when I realized that he had written this book. And it's a big fat book. He takes it very seriously. He writes in the introduction, like he went through so many decks until he found like the perfect one, which turned out to be the Marseille. And then he's been studying tarot since like the 50s, since the late 50s, since he was hanging out with Leonora Carrington. So I thought that was super cool. So I got his book and I was really excited about it. It's really big and I don't have the Marseille deck, so I'm not referring to it a lot yet. Um, but I chew my food slowly. It'll
Hmm.
happen.
Oh, for sure. And for listeners, the both of us are very into tarot. We both love tarot, and a lot of the reviews that I had been reading, a lot of the literature that I've been reading about Jodorowsky and Santa Sangre was how a lot of the scenes were portrayed like tarot cards.
I
Um,
was thinking that too.
yeah, in the surrealist imagery, we'll get into it more. But you've said that you've watched Holy Mountain before, I
Hmm.
believe. How does that compare to your experience with Santa Sangre?
Yeah, I was talking about this last night with my daughter Lily, who is also a fan of Jodorowsky. We both agreed that Holy Mountain was like a line of like Santa Sangre has a narrative, a beginning, middle, and end, whereas
Hmm.
Holy Mountain is just kind of bonkers all the way through. And maybe each little scene has a beginning, middle, and end, but it's the narrative arc is I think it's winding rather than arcing, if that makes any sense.
No, that makes so much sense, especially because of the fact that in everything that I could research about Holy Mountain, I've never seen it, but I did a little bit of research on it. Is that like it definitely follows those like Buddhist fables of trying to find enlightenment, and I think the it's not a dichotomy, but like in Santa Sangre, I think we can talk a little bit about Buddhism versus Catholicism as
Mhm.
well. We will also get into that, dear listener. But before doing that, this is a good leeway into talking about Alejandro Jodorowsky in general, as well as all of the preamble to the film. Last week we discussed about the 1982 film adaptation, or the 1982 stage production that was filmed of Sweeney Todd, and I brought in a lot of information there about like what went into that, how much money it made, etc. And in this case, I wanted to talk about Alejandro Jodorowsky in general. So the films prior to Santa Sangre that he had made were El Topo, Holy Mountain, and a children's movie called Tusk. And between El Topo and Tusk, he was supposed to direct Dune, which has its entire own documentary about of like why and where it failed. But imagine if we got Dune by Jodorowsky.
I would be all about it. Because
This
personally, I think the Dune movies have failed, all of them, including Lynch's.
hmm I feel like it really just needs Jodorowsky's like circus. You know what I mean? Like he uses a lot of bright colors. And I feel like, which which I think would fit really well in that sci-fi fantasy aesthetic that comes with Dune. And I think he would do really well in portraying the metaphors of colonialism that run rampant in Dune. Immediately before starting Santa Sangre, he made this children's movie called Tusk, which is about an elephant, which the movie primarily one of the main symbols of Santa Sangre is the dying elephant. Now Jodorowsky did say that like for a while he was very obsessed with the image of an elephant, specifically of the chakra that the elephant represents,
Mm.
um, which we're gonna get into the psychosexual stuff of Santa Sangre, but the elephant is supposed to represent you get it like tattooed on, he called it the space between your balls and your butthole. Um so take that what you will.
Yes.
Um and how you go and interpret this movie. Now El Topo, one of his earlier films. Have you ever seen El Topo?
I have not. And I
It is an maybe I don't know if you should. It's one of his controversial ones,
mhm.
and for a very specific reason. It is an acid western, that stars one of his sons and him in it, and his son is just like, I think, riding a horse naked with him the entire time.
Mhm. Okay.
Which I mean, as we know, with Santa Sangre, he does not have a problem filming his sons naked. But in this specific one, there is a rape scene with a woman and Jodorowsky, his character. And in recent interviews, he said it was essentially boils down to him saying it felt like I had actually raped her. And the way that I think he was supposed, like he meant to say it, was that like it was very intense of a scene, that it the line felt very off, not that he actually physically did.
Yeah.
So there was quite a bit of backlash when he said that, but you can make your own judgment there. When he started making Santa Sangre, it came from a lot of different places, a lot of different inspirations. He wondered, is it possible to portray a sympathetic serial killer after? I believe it was him who made conservative comics in Mexico at the time, or was it Chile? I think it was Mexico. He was sitting down at a cafe, and a man walked up to him and sat down across from him and was talking to him about how much he loved his comics. And it turned out to be a infamous Mexican serial killer,
Wow.
who had right who had gone to jail for killing 17 women. He said that he was reformed. We can have a discussion about the death penalty and like whether we can actually reform serial killers. That's a different conversation for a different time. But that was one of his inspirations in making this film. And before getting on air, we talked about how this really did feel like Jodorowsky's Psycho and Freaks.
Mm.
And we definitely saw a lot of David Lynch's influence there.
Yeah.
And I think that comes in part with working with Dario Argento's brother, Sergio Argento.
Yes, very interesting. I wanted to ask you about that connection. Would I be derailing to ask you, like, why do we see Dario Argento's name before we see Jodorowsky's name?
I think because he is the producer. But yes, I was going to get into that too. The conversion rate between the amount of money it took to film this in Mexico to like American dollar to like the modern day dollar is that it cost about $250,000 to make,
Wow.
which in the film world is like saying here's a piece of chewed gum and a paperclip. can you make a movie? Um, which is crazy for like how beautiful and intricate this film is.
Hmm.
Um, and how many moving parts there are too. Alejandro Jodorowsky and is it Sergio Argento or was it Dario Argento?
I thought it was Dario
Uh,
because I wondered at the name.
it was Claudio Argento.
Claudio. Okay.
Yes, it was one of the Argentos. Yes, so it essentially ended up becoming a collaboration between Italy and Mexico in its funding and its distribution.
Fascinating.
Right? It was immediately after I believe Claudio Argento and Dario Argento made Tenebrae that Claudio Argento started working on Santa Sangre.
Which of the Argentos did Suspiria?
That was Dario Argento.
Okay. Wow.
Yeah.
Some connection there.
And I think you can definitely see a lot of giallo elements in Santa Sangre, in the lighting, in the way that the characters are disposed of on screen. It's very beautiful. These characters' deaths, and even though a lot of giallo is a part of the slasher genre, there's a lot of mysticism involved in it. I think because Italy is a very Catholic country, and so is
Yes.
Mexico.
Hmm.
Uh, so I think there's a lot of like Catholicism, a lot of conversation within Catholicism in Santa Sangre and Giallo in general.
100%. All the
But
shrines in the church,
the
then in
shrines in the church,
yeah.
the chicken Jesus scene.
Yeah. Oh wait, are we going to talk about that yet or should we wait? Because I
Let's wait. We let's wait. I think this is actually a good time to transition into talking about the movie in general. But the movie is seen as Jodorowsky's like most accessible film because it has a clear beginning, middle, and end for the most part. It's beautiful. Before we get into the actual plot, on a scale of 1 to 10, how would you rate Santa Sangre?
Oh, these are difficult questions for me to answer because you know, like I do all kinds of like mathematics and acrobatics in my mind, like am I comparing this with something else? Like, is it just like a standalone experience for me personally? Okay, it's like a standalone experience for me personally, not bringing into anything else into the equation. I would say it started with each viewing, like the rating goes up. So I would say it started at an 8,
Hmm.
and then the appreciation grows, and especially like in my last viewing last night before getting ready for this podcast, I'm watching it with a critical eye and I'm taking notes, and it's just like the more you notice, the more you appreciate what's happening and like kind of the beauty of the connections. Like, so I would say my appreciation is growing. Yeah, no set rate yet,
No
but
set
it's
rate yet.
high. It's high. Yeah. I
Amazing.
appreciate I appreciate the artistry. I really do. And there's a
Yeah,
lot.
I definitely appreciate the artistry too.
Yeah.
I would probably say similarly around like an 8 out of 10. And let's get into this. Let's
Yeah.
get into the summary
Hmm.
of this film. So we open up this movie with a very naked man in a
Hmm.
tree who seems a little feral given that he's in a tree.
Hmm.
As we pan out, we see a few doctors and nurses come in, and we can assume that he is in some kind of asylum. Not quite an asylum, but perhaps a mental ward. They try to convince him to eat real people food, but he chooses to gnaw on a raw fish, and it's a giant fish. So he like squawks and jumps down from his tree and begins to eat this fish. Reactions.
Yeah, I have something to say about this for sure. I was talking about this again with Lily. I wish she was here on the podcast with me because she has some very astute observations. But the thing that I noticed was when the doctor says, eat like a human being, and he offers up like the regular plate of food, like some meat product with some gravy on it. Maybe there's some mashed potatoes. I can't remember, but like there's a stack of white bread slices. And then I noticed on the cart, like there's kind of like a side compartment, kind of like where drinks would go if it was a cart on an airplane or something. And that is filled with white bread slices. So it's like, white bread is there's something he's saying something here. He wouldn't just fill a thing with white bread slices and stack the white bread if there wasn't something being said here. So I said to Lily, I was like, obviously the color white is working its way in here, like in the first scene, but also like something about processed food. Eat like a human being. Like, what is it to be a human being to like eat this white processed bread? And then Lily said, oh, yeah, it's colonization. I was like, oh, ooh, I would never have thought to say that. That's so smart. But like, yeah, it's like, I think it's comment on like colonialism and, what is it to be human? You know, like he's in his primal animal state. So like we talked about the tarot earlier, whereas like, which card is it in the tarot where they're like talking about like a person in their primal animal state? Um, Actually, I have a note. I have a note right here because I just finished a tarot class, and there's a deck where there's a saint. Or you know what? I'm leading us astray. Regardless, there's a correspondence in the tarot with that primal animal state that we find Phoenix in.
Yeah, I didn't notice the white bread too, but the moment you mentioned it, I went, American colonialization and the American industrial process, invading other countries and transposing our own, as we are both American. We both live in the New York City metropolitan area, but the industrial American industrial complex is one that is very prevalent in this movie, especially as we go further on and learn about Orgo and El Circo del Gringo,
Yeah.
with the white man circus at the heart of Mexico City.
Yeah. Oh, and one more thing I want to say about finding Phoenix in his like raw animal form. He was harmless. He wasn't killing people. He like rejected the food of human beings. He wanted to just eat the fish. He wasn't killing anybody. He wasn't having hallucinations. Like, and it was as soon as they like put him in a suit, took him out to like go to a movie. Am I getting too far ahead? All right, I'll wait. I'll wait to talk about the movie. But
Yeah. So we get this pretty cool transition from like Phoenix's squawking and his like face into the face of an eagle as we flash back in time to Phoenix's childhood at El Circo del Gringo. We open up in this like bombastic fashion show and like this procession of band performers from the big top from the circus and enter the clowns. This is the first instance of that we get of the clowns.
hmm,
Um and we see them, interacting with the crowd. They've got instruments, they're painted, they're in this procession. And this, dear listener, is where we find our Greek chorus. Once again, listen to the episode one and to understand more about what the Greek chorus is and its function. But ultimately, the Greek chorus is a show of on the screen, on the stage of the common person or what the common person would feel like. So a lot of the times in ancient Greece, there would be tradesmen, bakers, just regular folk portrayed as the Greek chorus who would sing and dance. And that's where chorus comes from, choreo, choreography, the dance. So this is our first instance of the chorus. We are supposed to find ourselves in the clowns, I do believe. I tried doing some academic research on Santa Sangre, and there was not a lot available, especially when it comes to the clowns in the Greek chorus. So this will be fully a discussion between the two of us on what it constitutes. But then we see Phoenix as a young boy waking up his alcoholic father in a car. His father ushers him away after he's rushed away, and he's feeling a little down. The small person Aladdin comforts him and tells him that there is a new performance introduced into the fray of the circus. The tattooed lady and her ward. I'm gonna call Alma her ward because she's not her daughter, not physically. Any thoughts?
Yeah. So, yeah, I was thinking about Orgo, and maybe I'm introducing this a little bit early, but he seemed to jump out at me as as a tarot card also because of his knives. He does everything with knives.
Mm-hmm. He
Like,
almost seems like the Hanged Man to me,
oh, interesting. I didn't get that about him.
or even the Emperor.
Could be the emperor, but I was going very pedantic. I was going very literal, and I thought, is he the king of swords? Like,
Oh yeah, the King of Swords, perhaps. I think that would probably be the closest thing, especially given his downfall later
yeah,
on.
his worst qualities, like King of Swords portraying his worst qualities. But anyway, going back to your question, like, so we meet like the vicious and brutal tattooed lady. She's like abusing her ward Alma. This is the first thing that Phoenix sees, and Alma's like looking really like afraid and really like scared and distressed. And it's like what we know about Phoenix so far, he's also like kind of like distressed also. So here's two distressed young people. So he connects with her because she's showing, she's like vulnerable and in trouble and needs help or something. But also she's very cute. She has her mask on, her painted face, and we learn right away that she's a deaf mute, and tattooed lady, like, we don't like her. She's an asshole. She's a big asshole. She doesn't make any qualms about it. And then she disrobes for Orgo, and she becomes this snake. She's a snake. She's like, I guess she's Lilith, maybe. Um,
Perhaps she definitely becomes the seductress.
yeah, the seductress and the snake in the garden, I don't want to get too far ahead, but like garden was definitely a big theme throughout this.
Yeah, and when she disrobes in front of Orgo, the clowns then swarm her. We first see her tattoos. The clowns make comment on her tattoos.
Right, right.
Um, so once again, the chorus, and they point out quite a lot. They point out that she has a peacock, the moon, fish, crab, the ocean, which are all feminine aspects. They're very liquid. She almost represents the suit of the cups,
Mm,
of pure emotion and sexuality.
yeah. But she's such a jerk.
But she's such a jerk. She's like the worst qualities of the Queen of Cups.
Hmm. Yes.
Um, fun fact about the tattooed lady in a behind the scenes is that she was allergic to the ink that they were originally using for her tattoos.
Oh no.
And so they switched to like water-based markers, like Bic markers for those tattoos. And they look great.
Yeah, they do.
Um, but she was not allowed to shower because, it was at a time where you couldn't just like one to one ratio for the film, it's physical film. So she said in an interview that it felt great to finally shower after 7 weeks.
No.
She couldn't shower for 7 weeks. Imagine not showering for 7 weeks.
My goodness. You'd have to get very creative about certain types of hygiene. Yeah.
Especially because she spends the majority of the movie in like a bikini.
Yes. Well, I did notice that certain areas were free of tattoo.
Yeah, like the inner thighs and like the armpits. It
Yeah.
was it was definitely free, so maybe she could do a little washing. But learning that fact, I felt so bad for the actress. But yeah, she's definitely not the greatest, and we're gonna get into like I want to say her biggest sin of the movie
Mm.
later on. But yeah, there is this seduction that comes between the tattooed lady and Orgo, where he Orgo is simultaneously the ringmaster and the knife thrower, and he seduces her. Well, they kind of seduce each other by throwing knives all around her, including between her legs, where she kind of like does a little like
And me,
dance around it.
she finds it really hot. Like that's like the kind of the apex of her, it's like yeah. It's like that's like the culmination of the knife. Like she's getting more and more aroused with every knife throw, with every like, and she's not afraid at all. She's like she loves it, which is we hear this later in the film. But yeah, she's not afraid at all, but she's not hypnotized. Like he has to hypnotize Concha.
Yeah.
She's not hypnotized. She loves it. And so it's like every knife throw like is like another leveling up of her arousal with the culmination of the knife between her thighs. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. The combination of the knife between her thighs, phallic imagery everywhere in this movie. We cut away from this scene, Phoenix is watching this unfold, and you can see it imprinting on him, on
Mm.
his mind. Alma not distracts him, but pulls his attention away from the seduction, and he performs this magic trick where he pulls a cherry out of thin air and gives it to Alma, who is then brave enough to cross the tightrope of fire.
Yeah.
Uh, and I think that is quite beautiful. I think that was
I
quite a
It
beautiful
was
scene.
really beautiful. I loved that, that like every scene where they were together as children, it was like, delightful because there's so much degradation and terrible tensions and like, violence going on all around them. And between the two of them, they managed to find this little paradise.
It's I would say it's the Two of Cups or the Lovers cards.
Mm.
They're like childhood innocent ability, or even what is it? I think it's the Eight of Cups where you see a young boy giving a young girl a cup of water.
Oh, that's six.
The
That's the.
Six of Cups.
Mhm.
So once again, the cup, the cherry, but we cut from as Alma takes her first step onto the tightrope of fire. We cut to a group of women protesting very loudly behind gates, and one of those women is Phoenix's mother, Concha. And in the scene, we learned that this group of women, their church called Santa Sangre, is being threatened to be torn down. And everyone in this group wears these deep, bright red garments with a symbol of like two arms interconnected. While they're protesting, they're also not afraid. They're playing music, they're singing. There's so much life here, and they're holding these like bright purple flowers. I can't help but to bring up the Catholicism
Mm.
now of the movie. This is a church where inside there is a large pool of quote unquote blood, as well as memorabilia to their saint, Saint Lirio, who Phoenix's mom tells the story of. She is a young schoolgirl who tried to fight off her attackers but had her arms cut off and was then raped. It was in that spot where the pool was that the blood never dried, or so the saints say, as she said. But the Monsignor, of a member of the Catholic Church, comes in to try and save the church, where he then goes, "This pool is paint. This is paint and water." He calls it sacrilege, and everyone's like, "It's not sacrilege," and begins to like party and worship Saint Lirio. To which the Monsignor exits and calls for the church to be torn down.
Yeah.
Everyone evacuates but Concha, and the only way for her to, she's like begging to be killed with Saint Lirio, a mannequin of Saint Lirio. The only thing to get her out of there is Phoenix coming up and crying to her. Thoughts on this scene?
Oh gosh, so many thoughts. Okay, well, there's your capitalism and colonialism, with the guy in the who's like standing on top of the mound who says, "Get them off my land," right? So there's like capitalism, ownership, and then and the flowers and the robes of the Monseigneur. Okay, enter the color purple, which we're going to be
Mm-hmm.
throughout the film, or lavender rather, lavender and purple. That, and then also the Monsignor pulls up in a limousine, you know.
Right?
Yes. So there's definitely some comments being made about capitalism here. But I had, like, before I have make any more comments about it, I had a question about like the boy that accompanies the Monsignor, who's all dressed in white, and the only it's the only time we see him in the film. He's definitely saying something with the kid. He's like white, he's all dressed in white, he's taking notes, he has like a little notepad. And the Monsignor is like, let's get out of here, Kevin, before they corrupt your, I forget the exact words, like corrupt your, pure soul or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's just like, what does the kid represent? Because I thought there was something kind of like maybe erotic also. I'm not sure. I wasn't sure. It's like, I feel like this scene represents so much of the contradiction and the juxtaposition. Like this is where we start to see like realities clash and blur. Like what is holy, what is holy. Just because you pull up in a limousine, like that gives you authority. It's like, where's the authority here? And I don't see it anywhere, actually. It's kind
Yeah.
of like the pot calling the kettle black, holy blood, it's paint, it's holy blood, it's paint. And they're literally fighting.
Yeah, they're fighting over things that don't e- exist. Now, for listeners, I grew up Catholic. You know, I am not Catholic. I would say that I am non-practicing. I'm spiritual, but you know, growing up in the Catholic Church, seeing the all of the ways in which the Catholicism and the church appear in this movie of, you know, these fables, these stories that people take to be real, completely influencing their lives and their decision making, their morality, when it's simply not real. Now, when it comes to the young boy, I kind of perceive him as this perceived innocence in comparison to like the actual innocence that is Phoenix and Alma. Alma means soul in Spanish.
Oh,
Uh,
you know that.
yes, Alma means soul. So there's like this young man. I it was definitely I think picking up on the erotic portion of the young man is correct because he was very handsome.
Very handsome.
Yeah, the young man, he
Mhm.
definitely represents that perceived innocence of what the Catholic Church considers to be innocent. You
Yeah.
know, virginal
Mhm.
or, perceived virginity and this goodness in the world versus, these two children who are beyond traumatized by their upbringing and their parentage. They don't get the option to be innocent. You know, Alma wears black and white and red, and so does Phoenix. But anytime that they're wearing white, it's always accented by other colors. So I think it has something to say with the way that the Catholic Church doesn't perceive those that are within the church as innocent and as
Mhm.
people to be saved. And how fucked up that is. Did you grow up Catholic?
No, not Catholic. The closest I got to any kind of like church life was my first like elementary school was Episcopalian, and I had to
Mm.
go to church every morning before school.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I grew up Catholic. I didn't have like a communion or anything like that. I've only been baptized, so I can't even take the wafer. Like we grew up very Catholic in upbringing, but not literalism.
Mhm.
So I was baptized and that's about it, but I still have all the Catholic trauma that comes with Catholicism, so that's great. But
There's so
moving
much
on.
drama. There's so much drama with the Catholic saints, and Catholicism as portrayed like, in Italian movies and, Spanish movies, like there's so much drama and there's so much blood. There's so much blood.
Yeah, I agree. And this is something that I will eventually get into in the future. And only the church gets to decide who is a saint. There are people who like do good their entire lives and sacrifice themselves for the church, but they would never be seen as a saint because there was no blood spilled.
That's the requirement for blood to be spilled?
There is a life-ending sacrifice is essentially what I get from the saints in Catholicism. Even though really at the end of the day it's a syncretism between like the old gods and the saints. So like Saint Bridget is Bridget in Ireland, Saint Patrick is Baldrig in Ireland. There are these figures that they would syncretize, much in the way that the Romans would syncretize their gods, which is why we have the difference between Dionysus and Bacchus,
Right.
uh, or Venus and Aphrodite, or why we say Hercules instead of Heracles.
Hmm.
Essentially, the Catholic Church is just the Roman Empire existing today.
Okay.
Is
Okay.
is that's the vibe. The as Going back into the plot of the movie, the clowns are also there watching
Yeah.
the church get bulldozed, and as they walk back, the clowns they comfort Phoenix in his sadness, as opposed to his mother who walks dejectedly.
Can I talk about that for a second?
Oh yes, of course.
So the end, when the church is getting bulldozed and Concha is clinging to Lirio. Is that how you say it? Lirio? Say
Yeah.
Lirio? Clinging to Lirio, saying, kill me. And we see Phoenix like crying, mother, mother. And I'm like, where's the mother's love? Like, she's willing to die for this saint, but not live for her son. So it's like we get this image of Concha clinging to Lirio, a wooden doll with no arms, and then Phoenix runs up and is clinging to his mother. And this like living, breathing woman. Um, and you just have this like one shot of the three of them like clinging, like she's clinging, and it's just like you see this as a theme also, like the mother rejecting the son,
Mm-hmm.
or just not even thinking about him, like poor kid. So I just wanted to make that point about like how the mother is, doesn't see the son, doesn't notice him until like he's like clinging and crying, and then she's like, oh, okay. And then she like feels him. But that comes up later on. Like Phoenix, like she says to him, like, nobody sees you, nobody notices you.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, nobody sees you, nobody notices you. It's this young man yearning for recognition from his parents. And
Yeah.
we'll get into the wanting recognition from his father too. I think I can relate to Phoenix as a queer child, even though we get into it. His sole, identity is he's definitely into women. He's heterosexual, but there once again there's a lot of comparisons to between this and Psycho, and how the queerness isn't necessarily just in what is seen on screen, but what is felt. And this battle between the mother crying for the mother's attention, when all she can really perceive is her religion.
Like an outsider in your own family.
Definitely an outsider in your own family. And the clowns comfort him even as they walk away from the bulldozed wreckage. They make him smile. They, give him flowers, but like his mother does nothing. And as they make their procession down the street to the circus, this is where we see Concha walk in as the tattooed woman quite literally sticks her entire ass in Orgo's face in this snake seduction.
She's a very talented lady.
Very talented. The way that she choreographed this movement is quite beautiful.
Yeah. She's incredible, that
She
actress.
Oh yeah, she really went all out for this role for like being in the movie for a total of like maybe 15 minutes. But it's at this point that Concha sees the seduction and grabs the phallic knife and threatens the tattooed woman that she is going to kill her, and the tattooed woman is scared, but Orgo then proceeds to hypnotize Concha
Mm.
by baring his chest and showing his tattoo, which, let's talk about masculinity, you know, like the ability to just show your chest, and that is the hypnotization.
Wait, wasn't it the knife blade that actually does the hypnotizing? Like he like shows it in front, waves it in front of her face, and like the shininess, like I that's the impression that I got anyway.
He does that. He like does the shiny wave, but she breaks through the hypnotism, which makes me think that he's done it before and she's been able to like
Mm.
exit it. He bares his chest to show off his tattoo, which
Mm.
hypnotizes her further. He does uh the knife thing again, to which he eventually carries her out. And let's be clear, the following scene is a rape scene. She's hypnotized, but they go and proceed to have sex.
And very animal noises, like in the hay with the animals like in their cages as witnesses. Like, they're like behind this wall of hay, but yet on the other side are these cages with the animals, and he's making definite animal sounds, like growling like an animal, and she's like screaming. So it's like we're back to like the primal animal, what can I say, aspect of
Mm-hmm.
humanity that do I say Jodorowsky, you say Jodorowsky. I don't know. Is there a proper way to say his
I
name?
I don't. There is definitely a proper way to say his name. I say Jodorowsky because the JY Polish.
Hmm.
Um, and I believe his parents are European. after
Mm-hmm.
moving to Chile. So I say Jodorowsky. I think technically in Spanish it would be Jodorowsky with an H.
Okay. And eventually come out of my mouth in a way that's acceptable, I hope.
Uh, it'll be fine. It'll be fine. It'll be great. But yeah, as they're having this animalistic sex, as they reach climax, Concha's screams turn into the sounds of an elephant, whatever sounds an elephant makes.
Right. Oh, I didn't
As
catch. That's a good transition.
great transition, especially because then we see the elephant trunk spurting out blood
Mm.
as we witness the death of this giant animal. Now, Phoenix was there witnessing his parents have this animalistic sex, and then that immediately transitions into him witnessing the death of this great beast. The
Mm.
clowns once again comfort him. Essentially, the clowns comforting him is us, the audience, comforting him as
Mm.
the surrogate. And I think that helps us as the audience sympathize with Phoenix, especially as he gets older. We get to see all of this trauma with him because we are the clowns watching him.
Mm.
And it goes back to Jodorowsky's goal of trying to make a sympathetic serial killer. We get to comfort him as he witnesses this great beast dying.
Yeah, I was really wondering about the significance of the elephant, and I think that you explained it really well in the beginning of this segment when you talked about how elephants are a theme within all of Jodorowsky's work. So, because I was just really like, elephant question mark, spouting blood. What does the elephant represent here? And then I thought, like, is this a prophecy? Is this like a foreshadowing? Like the blood, is Phoenix like somehow relating to the elephant?
I take it that he's relating to the elephant in that this, we see the elephant's trunk before the elephant as we transition from the sex scene or the rape scene.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to call it what it is.
Mm-hmm.
And, I think there's this phallic imagery that comes with the elephant trunk. And it kind of feels like this, once again, that Catholic idea of sex being a sin, you know, and
Mm-hmm.
the shame that comes from it.
Sorry, I just wanted to like point out one other thing that I saw, like, hitting on a few different points in the movie. When he first hypnotizes Concha, when Orgo first hypnotizes Concha, he says, "Come here, my little child," right?
Right?
So it's like I feel like children being at once cared for and then violated is a theme.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Like litterio, child, girl child, schoolgirl uniform
Mm-hmm.
comes back as well, like later on, right? The school
Right.
uniform. She is violated, innocence violated, like so, like violently.
Mm-hmm.
So Orgo's like, come here, my little child. And then, as you say, like she's hypnotized, then raped. You know,
Mm-hmm.
it's, I don't know.
Yeah, definitely the loss of innocence. I think the I've seen this movie be called a coming of age movie.
Oh my God.
Um, yeah, right. It and I mean it really is even down to like adult Phoenix. This coming of age of coming to terms with who you are and like the traumas that is inflicted upon you in your childhood. Um, and I think every character, in a sense, is coming of age on their own, or at least every character that has an arc. Not all the characters have an arc. I think there's a new term nowadays for some coming of age movies called coming of rage
Oh,
with an R,
yes.
um, in which the characters, the primarily teenage or young adult characters, must commit an act of violence in order to become an adult.
Wow. Or have an act of violence committed against them.
Yeah, it's usually in response to an act of violence committed against them.
Like it's like an inheritance of trauma.
Hmm.
That's your
And
right.
coming to terms with what trauma does to you and how you can take a hold of it on your own. But we do transition from the death of the elephant into this grand procession of the circus performers.
Where Orgo is holding an American flag.
Hmm. Because he's an American.
That's right. That's right. We learned that at the beginning of the film. Or-
Yes,
Yeah.
that he had killed an American woman and fled to Mexico. And I think that I don't know if I believe that as an audience member. I think that is just something to make him be perceived more as masculine, as this like mythology of the father. But there's this procession of this giant, like blue, beautiful casket.
Yeah. Ornate.
Oh, this ornate. I don't know where this money came from. It didn't seem like the circus really did much, um, besides be there in this procession, and everyone is wearing black, uh,
Hmm.
including the tattooed woman who wears her favorite black like bra and panty.
Yeah.
The only person to not wear black is Phoenix, who wears the red robes of the church Santa Sangre.
That's right.
In this procession, they come to this like cliffside face,
Mm.
and they cut a rope, and this giant casket is thrown off of a cliff into, let's call it, a low income area. It's definitely a shanty town of these like poorer, maybe unhoused folk who, upon seeing this casket, break it open and begin to throw meat at each other as to presumably eventually cook. And Phoenix is watching all of this.
Yeah. So the hill people, as I call them, because we see them on the opposite rise, like this, they throw the casket down this ramp into this deep gully or gulch or whatever you want to call it, where garbage is strewn, and it's like presumably like that's the dump. That's the dump. And so the people are on the other side of the gul gulch, I'll call it, where their shanty town is. Everybody is painted white. Enter the color white. Here we go. Here's white again.
Mm-hmm.
All the people are white. And I'm wondering what's up with that. So it's like, what's the comment here on white on these people? Like they're poor, they've been painted white. Is this like colonialism again? Like they are suffering poverty because they've been painted white? The
Uh,
white of colonialism
oh, I like that reading. I like maybe perhaps that colonialism has failed them
into this
gigantically.
whiteness, this like fiction of whiteness, which they suffer in.
Hmm. And we see it. We see it. We see painted bodies white. Well, later on in the movie, and we'll get to that part.
Right.
And I think there is a good reading between these less fortunate folks, the hill folk, being painted white, Alma being painted white, and eventually the corpses being painted white. And I think we can talk about that more later. But as Phoenix watches this elephant be his dear friend the elephant be torn apart by these folks for meat,
Consume.
um,
Yeah.
to be consumed, he is crying next to his father Orgo, and Orgo tells him to stop crying and promises him a charm. To which they go into this like art studio, but it's like filled with these like beautiful paintings of like Renaissance paintings,
Mhm.
possibly Baroque paintings of Christ and the church and saints. And even at one point, you see a mannequin of Jesus without his arms.
Mm. I didn't see that.
Oh, yeah, there was. It was like behind him as he was getting tied down to the chair.
I was very focused on his hands and his wrists and his arms.
Hmm. Being
Um,
tied back to the
mhm.
chair.
In such an
Uh,
uncomfortable way, like he's just a young boy.
he's just a young boy, and his father proceeds to tattoo him with a knife
Hmm.
a the tattoo of a phoenix
Of the eagle,
and
right?
of a phoenix.
Oh, I thought it was an eagle.
It's I mean it's a bird. Um, it's a large bird. I think it's supposed to be a phoenix because his name is Phoenix.
Mm. But I
Um,
thought it was an eagle because the dad was trying to make him like him.
I think I yes, but I think that it's he recognizes that Phoenix is also different, so he gets a different bird.
I think that this is reason for another viewing of Santa Sangre.
Uh,
Uh,
who doesn't need another viewing of Santa Sangre?
but I just want to say something about the room, like
Hmm.
the place where he takes Phoenix for the tattoo. Like it's really different from the rest of the environments so far. You know, it's like beautiful, it's clean, like there's like marble, there's wood. It's like an expensive room, right? And
Hmm.
it has a cathedral ceiling. So it has
Hmm.
that feeling of a church. And he's so and I felt like the ritual with the knife and the tattoo, this was like another kind of nod towards, like religious rites, like Catholicism. I don't know, maybe you know more about this than I do.
I think there is definitely this like I think it's the you know Catholicism is one of the greatest ways that we've been able to preserve old like pagan rites and mysticism within cultures because of that syncretization that I was talking about earlier. A lot of these these Catholic practices that we do now, like we're recording this right before Christmas, but the act of bringing in a tree and lighting it and giving presents and telling ghost stories was all part of, like the Wild Hunt, Odin's Wild Hunt,
Oh, wow.
and amongst other folk practices in Northern Europe. So in this case, I think there is this equation between machismo culture and Catholicism that is happening while young Phoenix is getting tattooed, which I have a fun fact about.
Ah, okay.
So the young Phoenix is played by one of Jodorowsky's sons,
Okay.
his youngest son. And so his youngest son asked he wanted it to feel like it was actually hurting because he wasn't actually getting tattooed,
Hmm.
obviously. So he asked to be pinched under the table so that way he would actually cry and feel pain and wince in this scene.
Oh, wow. That's interesting.
Right? Yeah, method acting. Yeah, all three of Jodorowsky's sons are in this movie.
Who are the other two?
I'll bring up one, I'll bring up the other one when we get to him. The older Phoenix is also one of his sons.
Okay. Because I was going to say that casting was brilliant because they both looked so like similar. I was like, wow, they did a great job finding like two actors that look so similar. Okay. They didn't have to look far.
They did not have to look far because they are his sons. And you know, another fun fact is that the older Phoenix, that son, actually took like lessons in miming. Like before becoming an actor, he went to school for miming.
I can totally see it. I can really see it. He's very talented, like physically, like his whole, yeah, he was great.
He was
And just,
very expressionistic.
hmm and
You
his
could
phys
definitely tell.
he's like so, and like he's like a dancer, I don't
Hmm.
know, like he has that grace and that elasticity.
We'll get more into his performance when we actually get to see him perform more. But
Mm,
yeah, he's beautiful. And I'll get to the other son when we get to him because that's funny.
okay.
Um, After the tattoo is when we get to see he shows it off to Alma and like, I'm a man now. And Alma, she makes the figure of a bird with her hands
Hmm.
and raises it and sets it free.
Hmm.
And we'll see that imagery a lot later. Just
Hmm.
wanted to point it out. And then we cut to the only time that we see the circus in action.
Yeah, I had something to say about that too. I just wanted to say one more thing
Mm-hmm.
about the place where the church, cathedral, art studio, whatever. We enter the room and the first thing we see is a chicken. So enter the chickens.
Enter the chickens! We have more chickens. There are a lot more chickens later on. There's chickens everywhere.
Chickens everywhere.
Chickens everywhere, and I have things to say about the chickens.
Oh God.
Um, but yes, we go into the circus and we get to see it in action finally. We see the clowns doing their performance, doing, their comedy bit. And then enter Phoenix and Alma doing a magician and assistant act
Hmm.
where he puts Alma into a glass coffin, covers it, and then out comes his mother in a sparkly leotard.
Right.
Should
I,
we talk about Freud
yes, let's
here?
unpack that.
Oh, let's
I,
unpack the Freudian nature of your young love turning into your mother.
yeah, yeah, I didn't want to like spend too much time on it, but I definitely wanted to say like he puts his girlfriend in the case and out comes his mother. So, yeah.
Freud is definitely rolling around in his grave. Every
Yeah,
single time someone watches Santa Sangre and they get to that part, Freud just like wakes up in his grave and goes, I'm being called upon.
not again.
Not again. And after being released from the glass coffin, she's wearing this like beautiful gold sparkly like leotard that shows off a lot of her body. She's so hot.
Hmm.
Um and then she does an trapeze acrobatic act by like hooking her hair
Yeah.
and being raised into the sky, which ouch.
Ouch.
Though I do imagine it's very similar to the way that like people are like, oh yeah, you can lay down on a bed of nails because of tension points. It's
Mhm.
spread out. So I imagine it doesn't hurt that bad, but still ouch.
Yeah. There's also being raised into the sky by skin hooks, by flesh hooks,
Mm-hmm.
right? I just thought of that just now.
It's certainly an image of pain, that like pain and pleasure that go hand in hand. From this high viewpoint, she now gets to see the tattooed woman and Orgo get really comfortable together in
Hmm.
the sidelines, and she screams to be let down, and she's let down finally, and but not before Orgo and the tattooed woman escape outside.
It's right at this point that we hear her tell Phoenix to get away. I think
Mm-hmm.
the first time, or is it like the second time she tells him to get away?
I think this is the first time because then she locks him in the trailer. So like Phoenix is looking for her to comfort him and she goes, "Get away from me," and locks him in a trailer.
Mm.
You can't see me, but I'm like staring intently. No, you can see me, but the audience cannot see me. I'm staring
But he
intently and
follows her. He follows her because I had a moment in the film where I was just like, what if he didn't follow her? Like, what if he like ran to Alma instead? Like, I don't know. Like it could have gone so many different ways, but he chases after her and then she locks him in the trailer.
exactly. Exactly. So the he's locked in this trailer And this is where we get to see full giallo lighting as Concha begins to stalk Orgo and the tattooed woman, because there's these lights outside of the circus. It's like goes red and green and I think like yellow, and it lights her face in this very chiaroscuro way. The music is intensifying, and she grabs sulfuric acid.
Yeah.
Why does the circus have sulfuric acid? Who knows? But she grabs a bottle of sulfuric acid and she enters the room where Orgo and the tattooed woman are getting it on. And she goes in, snatches off Orgo's terrible wig, and pours the acid all over his junk, as well as the tattooed woman's lower area. And with this, chaos ensues, and it culminates in Orgo pinning Concha against the knife throwing board, and in two swift motions, cuts off both of her arms. And she presumably dies, just as her Saint Lirio did. And we're back to the chickens because we get to see a gaggle of chickens begin to eat her arms.
That's right. Yeah, peck at the blood.
Peck at the blood, chickens, cock, more phallic imagery
Mm.
is, she is being consumed by her obsession with this man.
Yeah.
Um, and after this, Orgo stumbles naked out into the world bleeding from his junk.
Mm.
And he's holding himself and he collapses outside of the circus, looks at his legacy, Circo del Gringo, because he is no longer a man. He does not have junk.
Mm.
He doesn't have his dick.
Yeah.
He kills himself
Mm-hmm.
in front of a watching phoenix in the tree.
Mm-hmm.
And as Orgo lays dead in the street, a group of dogs eat him.
Mm-hmm. Lick up his blood.
They lick up his blood. Any thoughts about this sequence?
Well, starting back when Concha gets the acid out of the medicine cabinet, I don't know if this was like maybe if this was accidental or on purpose, but she reaches for the bottle and then she brings it to herself. And the bottle seems to kind of like disappear behind the veil of her like frills of her costume. Like it seems to kind of do this weird optical magic act. And maybe that's me just reading too much into it, but it just couldn't help but notice like it becomes veiled for a moment, which is like another nod towards like a tarot card, the high priestess, like being like veiled secrets. Anyway, that might be neither here nor there. But yeah, I mean, she takes his wig off, like she exposes him as a fraud, blonde. Like
Mm-hmm.
he's like nothing, he's bald, and destroys his manhood,
Mm-hmm.
just makes him worthless to like any other woman. And then he like does the thing to her that ultimately that she wants, or what he perceives that she wants. It's like she wants to be the armless saint, you know?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It's like it's funny, like of all the things that he could have done to her in that moment, he chose to do that.
Exactly.
And then like all kinds of blood is spurting from her. He's stumbling around with blood like flowing down his legs. It's really, it's not a guess as to what's happened to his like genital area, and then he kills himself because he's like, oh, I'm worthless now without my
Mm-hmm.
man. And yeah, I think that you pointed out like I think I was right along there with you with all the things that you were saying. But I wanted to point out another tarot card, sorry, to
Yeah,
bring it
no, I welcome it.
just earlier, like, and this comes from a recent class that I just took. Like someone just pointed out to me that there is actually three death cards in the deck.
Mm-hmm.
The first one is like the lovers. of all things. And I think it really shines through in this movie because, like, the death is talking about like the death of your connection to family, to like the mother, you
Mm-hmm.
know, it's like you can either choose to stay with the thing that you know, with the things that you know, and like the first woman in your life, or you can break away, you
Mm-hmm.
know, to like the unknown, to a different love, to a higher love, to like your own love, whatever. And to me, that really, like the situation between Concha, Alma, and Phoenix, like, it's like he wants to choose Alma, but he ends up choosing Concha, and that's his downfall. Like he doesn't
Mm-hmm.
choose the death,
Yeah.
of what he knows.
No, I love it. And we're going to talk more about the death card
Mm.
later on because we do get to see a physical representation of it. But I wanted to backtrack a little bit and talk about the wig.
About
Um,
the what? The
about
wig.
the wig.
Okay.
Which this is episode 3 of this podcast. Episode 2, like I said, was Sweetie Todd, the stage adaptation.
Yeah.
Have you ever seen the 1982 recording of Sweeney Todd?
You mean with Johnny Depp and Helena Bonham Carter?
No,
No.
with Angela Lansbury.
Oh, no.
I highly suggest going to watch it. I think, you can watch it on Amazon Prime if you have like I think you can rent it too. But it's the original stage production, like full musical stage production. And there are a ton of really bad wigs. And I talked about how much I hate Toby's character and his wigs. And I quite honestly called them homophobic because of how bad they were. It was an assault on my eyes.
Mm.
Um, and once again, we have a man with a really, really bad mullet getting his wig yanked off. So that is all I wanted to bring up. This is for listeners. Tear off a man's wig if you can. And that's been a PSA. Um, continuing,
Continue.
continuing on, continuing on. After after Orgo kills himself, the tattooed woman comes out. She's still alive. She grabs Alma and leaves. They get out of town.
Mm.
Um, Meanwhile, Phoenix is trapped in his trailer. We cut back to the modern day, and we see Phoenix in his little jumpsuit being ushered out into the rest of the building by the orderlies and the doctors, where it seems like this is an entire ward of young adults with Down syndrome.
Yeah.
And there's this group of young men who like latch on to Phoenix and like hold him like he is a saint is
Hmm.
my interpretation of it. Because they like put their hands on him and it kind of like feels like very religious in that moment.
Hmm.
It's in this courtyard that the main doctor tells Phoenix that he's going out to the movies with that group. And they go to the movies, they do. Do they see a movie? No. They are going to see Robinson Crusoe.
Interesting choice, by the way.
Interesting choice. Let's get into it, actually. What do you make out of Robinson Crusoe being the film chosen here?
Well, there's definitely a statement being made, because in the words of the doctor, he says, "One of life's castaways, just like us."
Mm-hmm. And Phoenix, the castaway himself. And I think that Robinson Crusoe is also this like ideal masculine form. This castaway who is able to like build himself back up and find salvation.
Right? Survivor, the ultimate survivor.
The ultimate survivor. Unfortunately, this group never gets to see their movie because the doctor pays this young, handsome man to watch over these kids as he goes out with, I think, his wife.
His
and then
grandmother. He says
his
his
grandmother,
grandmother. Yeah.
his grandmother, and then the nurse and one of the other doctors is hooking up in the car.
Yeah.
Um, and this young man goes inside with this group of young adults and Phoenix, and he tells them, "That's not a good time. The movies are going to rot your brain. Here, have some cocaine instead."
Mm-hmm.
And gives them all cocaine. Now, this, you asked where Jodorowsky's other son is.
Oh, is he the thug?
He is the pimp.
Okay. He was also very good.
Also very good for being like in the movie for a total of 5 minutes. And probably, in my opinion, hotter than Phoenix. But that's just me. I think Phoenix is also very attractive in this movie. You know, Jodorowsky putting out like attractive sons besides, obviously his youngest, that is a child.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but this pimp then proceeds to bring this group out on a night on the town, and there's a group of like streetwalkers like willing to party with them, and eventually he delivers them to this sex worker named Dolores to have sex with them. He takes their money that they were going to use for the movie and like offers them up to Dolores. But Phoenix stays behind because he sees the tattooed woman.
Yeah, he kind of like she gets her arms around four of them, right? Aren't they like five altogether? She gets her arms around four of them, and somehow Phoenix misses out in the embrace, and he just kind of gets like left back.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of like he's still coming, he's kind of still okay. Let me just backtrack a little bit. So
Mm-hmm.
like he gets taken to the courtyard with the doctor to meet like all like the like his friends, his new friends. The doctor is like trying to socialize him, brings him to the courtyard to meet this group of young men, and introduces them all by like holding their chins, and then they all like embrace, like he's like, embrace each other, you're friends, you're all friends. And it's like you see Phoenix starting to come out of his like his comatose, his gosh, what is that, like when you're so catatonic, he comes
Mm-hmm.
out of his catatonia, starting to slowly, like he's has contact with people, he's being touched, he's being embraced. And then the doctor says, and now we can all have some fruit. And here, like, enter the fruit, because fruit also plays a big part in this film. If fruit keeps coming back. And so I kind of like, I don't know if you made this kind of connection, but I thought the fruit, the courtyard, it's a garden of some kind, like a Garden of Eden of some kind.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone's kind of innocent in there. Like even the couples, like the shots of the couples who have Down syndrome, like there's still something very like innocent and beautiful and playful about their interactions. Like it's
Mm-hmm.
like you don't really see sin,
Yeah.
it's a garden. And
Yeah.
then, and then the doctor's like, okay, now you're all going to go to the movies. And then like enter sin. So enter
And
sin
then
in a
enter
big
sin.
way.
Enter sin in a very big way in cocaine and sex work.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, there is like this lingering shot of these two young boys in the courtyard who are like very close together, who look like they're in love.
Yeah.
Um, and once again, the queerness in this film. There's a lot of queerness in this film,
Mm.
including in the courtyard, where I'm going to explain this a little bit. So we do not use this term anymore in regards to these people. But in the 80s, it was definitely more common.
Yeah,
Um,
90s.
the 80s and the 90s. But these sex workers and these streetwalkers are what would be considered at the time transvestites.
Yeah.
We do not use that word anymore, but because it kind of smashes together, like, are they in drag, are they trans, like there's a little bit of confusion there. For the
Mhm.
purposes of the podcast, we're going to say that the streetwalkers and sex workers are transvestites, and then from there on we will go. But Jodorowsky actually was judging a, like, transvestite contest, like a pageant,
Mhm.
and he offered the girls in this pageant a spot in the movie, which is why we get all of these sex workers and
Right.
streetwalkers.
Right. Right.
Uh, and because, the budget was a shoelace
Mm.
uh, and a cracker, he Jodorowsky was like, it was great having them in the film. They brought their own costumes too.
Yeah.
So their consolation prize for, being finalists in this contest was to be in this movie.
Fun fact. That is a really fun fact. Because I really enjoyed the costumes and the pageantry. And and I noticed that the place where he brought the boys in Phoenix, where the pimp brought the boys in Phoenix, like it was kind of like this area, like a very like on its own. It's like a bunch of brothels because there were a bunch of whores and a bunch of Johns and a bunch of pimps. And it was like so much music and everybody's dancing. Like they walk in and like one of the Down syndrome boys immediately starts dancing.
Hmm.
So it's like, what's being said there? Like, this is fun. These people are having fun. They're living life.
I think it's supposed to be this, going back to Catholicism, this, like, I think, even though I don't think Jodorowsky would consider himself to be Catholic, but it kind of goes back to that, like, what you were saying earlier with sin, the outside world being sin
Mm.
from the Garden of Eden. But
Mm. There we
the
go.
way that the way that I interpreted it was, there's just so much joy on the
Mm.
screen in this courtyard. Um, and, there's so much music and celebration and beautiful costumes, and everyone looks like they're having a good time.
Yeah.
And, I think there is some queer joy here
Mm.
in
Mm.
this courtyard. But, he does see the tattooed woman
Yes.
among them. Now she herself is a sex worker. You know, it's at this point that everything kind of slides sideways in the movie, because the next morning he wakes up in his nest, because he has a nest in his room,
Mm.
in that basket, and the doctor wakes him up and is like, "Did you have a good time last night?" And the group of boys with Down syndrome, they're like, "Tee hee hee, ha ha ha," kind of laughing about what happened the previous night. And Phoenix gets up and he does, like, an acrobatic trick. He, like, does a somersault and then gets on the rope hanging from his tree and swings around, and everyone's applauding. They're like, "Oh my god, welcome back, Phoenix." And it's after they leave that Phoenix hears the voice of Concha from outside his window.
That's right. That's
Uh,
right.
lo and behold, there she is, and she's armless. She survived her de-arming, or so we think. I already said spoilers. She's not alive, but
We don't know that yet. We
but we
don't know.
don't know that yet.
Yeah, this part of the movie, we don't know that yet. She's like very much like we see her as Phoenix sees her, which is very solid, very real.
Very solid, very real, and he escapes the asylum by climbing out a window, and the two of them disappear into some fog.
Right. The white fog. I wanted to talk about that. Like this mist that just kind of, and it doesn't go down the street. It just literally goes across at the end of the street. Like it's very site specific mist.
Mm-hmm. It's very site specific because I think it's the mists of his mind. They disappear into the fog together, mother and son. We cut back to the courtyard, into what I assume to be a Dia de los Muertos celebration because there's just skulls and skeletons everywhere. So I
Mm.
assume it to be a celebration, and we see this group of drunk soldiers pay to have a good time with the tattooed woman, and she brings them back to her little place. And I do want to talk about the soldiers, but I'm gonna get through a little bit of it, the plot first. Two of them latch on to the tattooed woman, and the other one's kind of like off to the side, the tall one. The tattooed woman sells out Alma, who is a young girl, presumably an adult, but still young, and she sells her to this man, saying, "You can do whatever you want with her, and no one will hear her." Insane. I think that is the tattooed woman's biggest sin of the movie.
Oh, her biggest sin. Yeah. Okay.
I think because is essentially going, here, pay me so you can rape my ward,
Yeah.
who has no choice in the matter, is insanity.
Yeah. And she's like, she thinks it's funny. You can do whatever you want with her and no one will hear her. Haha.
Haha, teehee. But this man enters Alma's room and she freaks out. She was sleeping. And he like picks her up like a child.
Like a child. There we go. The child. Enter the child.
Enter the child. She freaks out because, newsflash, she's not a child. And she grabs a bottle and smashes it over her head, over this man's head, and escapes. Let's break down this scene. Um, what are your thoughts?
Yeah. I mean, I don't really have anything to say about it until like he enters her room and she's sleeping. And he looks at her and like he gasps and he looks amazed. Like the look on his face is like, oh, she's so beautiful, she's so innocent. He's never seen anything like that. It just, blows him away. And then she's still sleeping. He picks her up and just kind of rocks her in his arms like a baby. And it's like, and then when he turns on the light and she wakes up, then it's like, then it flips and she's like trying to get away and she's kicking and fighting and he's like throwing her on the bed and if she hadn't had that bottle nearby, like he might have succeeded in raping her.
I think, with the soldiers, we can also get into the military industrial complex and
Okay.
the military colonialism,
Mm.
um, military imperialism. Because while presumably these are Mexican soldiers, I think we can definitely graft it on, American soldiers in foreign land.
It wasn't one,
And
yeah, one of them was American.
one of them was American.
Yeah,
Yeah, one of them was American, and I think there's this idea that the American military gets away with a lot of that they should not. And it's this horrifying, I'm American, I can do what I want.
right.
And how other countries pick up on this American idea of, well, America can get what they want. We can get what we want. And I think we are currently living in a time where we're seeing the consequences of that, particularly, and I'm going to bring it up, but particularly in Israel,
Mm.
and the genocide happening in Gaza,
Yeah.
and now Syria and Jordan. But, we see these American led wars in other countries for profit, for capitalism.
For colonialism, yeah.
And, I think this is partially Jodorowsky showing that.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, obviously, like this film is like a poem. I mean, absolute like we could go on like this for the next like 5 hours, almost analyzing it like scene by scene, line by line.
Oh, yes.
Everything in there is for a reason. It's saying something.
Like you said, we could go on for 5 hours, so let's continue.
Oh yeah,
Um,
we're coming up to a scene that I really want to unpack.
so Alma smashes the bottle over this man's head and escapes. And she runs out into the crowd, and there's many scary sights, and including a man who can remove his ear, and he removes his ear and shoves it in her face, which I believe is something that Lynch also did in one of his movies where a man could pop out his eyeball and just kind of like cast him because he could.
Hmm.
Um, it was very similar with this actor who can tear off his ear. But Alma finds a blanket and climbs on top of a truck and tries to go to sleep. Enter a new POV for the camera as we entered the tattoo woman's quarters after the soldiers leave. There are these long red acrylic nails carrying a knife that then begins to stab and carve up the tattooed woman
Hmm.
in a very giallo manner. There's, you know, blood everywhere on like white surfaces, on lace, and the lighting is red and very abstract. Exit the tattooed woman. She can finally shower after 7 weeks. So in the morning, Alma wakes up and returns home to find the tattooed woman murdered. Cut to Phoenix, now dressed as a magician, who stumbles upon Aladdin shining the shoes of the tall man in
Soldier.
Alma's room, the soldier, and he recruits Aladdin for Concha's Magic Hands show. Do you want to get into the Concha's Magic Hands show?
Definitely. But I just wanted to backtrack a little bit. It was
Mm-hmm.
the man with the ear. Like I was just like, that was the one time I was just like, what the heck is going on here? I'm like, this came from out of nowhere. Like, what is up with the ear? And then like I thought about it and I came to the conclusion as you did. It's very Lynchian. Even the way the guy is lit, it's just it's straight out of David Lynch and like her expression, and I'm like, why does she stop for him? And it's like he's taking the ear and he's trying to shove it in her mouth. He wants her to eat it. That's what I thought.
Oh yeah.
And so my note to you is like that went completely over my head. I was like, whoo, that one went whizzing right by. Yeah, another reason to rewatch Santa Sangre, figure out what's happening there. So, and then the other thing I wanted to point out was right before Alma goes to sleep on top of the truck, she sees this foreboding shadow and it makes her
Mm-hmm.
gasp. And then we have entered the new POV at Tattooed Lady's door. Tattooed Lady says like, "Who are you?" And then the knife gets like thrown into her gut. I just want to talk about actually the placement of the knife, like
Mm-hmm.
where it goes into her. It's very, I think it's one of the chakra positions. It's like right below her breastbone.
Mm-hmm.
Like, is it the heart chakra? Like, what's there?
Is it the heart chakra or is it the stomach chakra?
Is it the stomach chakra? Anyway, it's like right below the breastbone. And we see that positioning again later on. Like he
Mm-hmm.
throws the knife like right into that spot, same spot. And you're right, that's when we see like the acrylic nails holding the knife. And the knife does like carves her up, but also does these like weird sensuous lines as well with the knife. Like the knife like stabs, but it also drags along her body, like in a weird sensual way. Yeah, there's definitely something sexual, like psychosexual happening there. Yeah, exit tattooed lady. We're not sorry to see her go.
Not sorry to see her go.
Oh yeah, and then I want to talk about the scene where like Alma discovers it all and she's like completely like literally like taken aback. She's against the wall, right? She
Mm-hmm.
like flattens herself against the wall in disbelief and horror. And to her right is a shelf of clowns.
Ah, it clowns.
The clown dolls, right? So on her right side is like the camera pans these clown dolls, and the one that's closest to her has a painted face, like her painted face.
Mm.
So it's like, and that's the thing I want to talk about also is like she has this painted face when she's a child. She gets taken away. Next time we see her, her face is naked. She has no face, right? And I think at some point like it's worth talking about like why, like the differences between like reality, surreality, face painted, no, naked face. Like, I just thought it was interesting thing to think about, another reason to watch. But then on to the left of her, and she points her face in that direction, is a picture on the wall of Phoenix as a young magician and
Mm-hmm.
Aladdin. And then we cut away to the next scene, the one that you're talking about, Phoenix as dressed as a magician, but older, like an older version of what's in the
Mm-hmm.
picture.
Yeah. Oh, to go back to your point about the clown dolls, I didn't even see the clown dolls. I guess I'll just have to watch Santa Sangre again. But that now once again we are introduced to the chorus, I guess.
Mhm.
Um,
The silent chorus, because they're mute. I mean, there's also something to be said here about the characters being speechless. Alma,
mhm.
the clowns, eventually the pimp is
Yeah.
also speechless.
And Phoenix spends a lot of his time at his mother's side speechless. His inability to convey what he needs to amongst his mother. Not having a voice, giving a voice to the voiceless.
Mm,
So yeah, I think amongst the murder, amongst the scene with Alma, we are once again, as the audience, the clowns witnessing tragedy. But we
yeah,
are voiceless to change it.
right. We can only witness.
We can only witness what is to come. And as this movie dives deeper and deeper and deeper into surreality, which begins at Concha's Magic Hands show, where Concha is on stage in this blue gown as she retells the book of Genesis. And
Hmm.
there's a mariachi on stage with her, and you can see her hands moving, and she has the red acrylics. Oh no, we figured out who the killer is. 5 seconds later, these hands, as we see, is Phoenix portraying what Concha is saying in the book of Genesis, leaving the garden for sin. And at one point, she moves like her head, and you see Phoenix's head, and he like goes into like almost kiss her.
Yeah.
Once again, Oedip- the Oedipal complex in this movie is insane. It was after this performance that there is a burlesque performer dressed as a schoolgirl, once again, a child, and she, while getting heroin pumped into her, offers Phoenix a good time, wink wink, a great performance together before going out on stage and doing a burlesque routine as the schoolgirl where her clothes are ripped off by the male audience members.
Yeah.
That like violence in masculinity,
Right. Raping the schoolgirl.
that
Although she's
fantasy.
nothing but innocent, right? She's a junkie. She's very tempting stripper.
Yeah, she's this stripper, but in a second she is about to be murdered, and I do feel bad for her.
I do too. Yeah, I like her. I like her in all her sin.
Yeah, she's fabulous. She's beautiful. She's captivating. We don't get a lot of her personality beyond that, but you almost like begin to think like, well, who are these girls and what can they be?
Mm. Did
Um,
you notice that the singer behind her is dressed in lavender?
no,
There we go,
La-
color lavender again.
the color lavender, which is often associated with queerness, lavender marriages and all that jazz.
Yeah.
Which is also interesting going back to the Catholic Church wearing lavender, but I digress. But, afterwards, Phoenix offers a great performance with this woman named Ruby, and she kind of like walks backstage after her performance and like surrounded by light. Phoenix ascends into the theater
Mm,
wearing Orgo's outfit,
that's right.
his like sparkly outfit bearing his chest. He attempts to seduce Ruby in the same exact way with the knife throwing.
right? He's replaying that scene with the tattooed lady in Orgo.
Exactly. And Ruby is so down for it. She matches his freak, but she's like, how will I ever stay calm with your knife throwing?
Yeah,
And Phoenix goes, I will hypnotize you.
right.
And he does. But right before the last knife is supposed to go in between her legs, Concha enters
Mm-hmm.
and she says, I order my hands and arms to kill her.
Mm-hmm.
To which he has to. He
Mm-hmm.
has to kill her.
He has
He's
to go.
supernaturally forced to do so.
Right.
The knife enters in her gut
Right.
at
Exactly in the same spot as the tattooed lady.
exactly the same spot. But she's still under the hypnotism, so she doesn't realize that she's dead. And Concha calls her a fool and tells him to wake her up, to which he does, and she dies. And then they stuff her in a donkey costume.
I thought it was a child's sleeping bag, but maybe it was a costume. Anyway,
It, yeah, it's a donkey costume. It's like a full ass, and it's huge.
when she's like, when they're standing off to the side of the stage in the wings and she's getting changed, and he's like, I thought about your offer. We should get our acts together. Will you meet me later? And she's like, yes. And then she says, I love your nose. And I was like, that's such a weird thing to say. Like, why say that? Like, and then there's like this focus on his nose and he's looking down, like kind of and like pleased but a little embarrassed. Like, I love your nose. Anyway, just wanted to point that out because it comes up later, of course.
Uh,
Um,
yeah,
but yeah, so oh, and Phoenix's hair is blonde. Did you notice when he
yeah.
like dad?
He has to emulate the masculinity that his father bestowed upon him.
Yeah, something about like the blonde, burly Adonis type. But there was like something I just wanted to, not to go all the way back, but just when they're on stage, when they're enacting the Concha, show with
Mm-hmm.
about being in the garden in the book of Genesis, like fruit. Fruit comes into the garden. There's the garden, there's the fruit. She says trees yielding fruit, and they knew sin. And then I just also wanted to say that the backdrop when the dancing girls come on the stage, which is so bizarre, right? At the end of their show, the backdrop itself is like this hell mouth with bloody teeth.
Oh, I didn't notice that part.
Yeah. But anyway, to come back to where we are, yeah, I feel like Ruby becomes the tattooed woman. I mean, this is like where I feel like Jodorowsky's narrative becomes like, easy for people to get. This is the difference between this and Holy Mountain, like
Mm-hmm.
you asked me earlier. And I feel like this is like a more graspable narrative. So it's like it becomes pretty obvious. Like becomes the tattooed woman, and he's like, and that's like the crux behind all of his killings, right? He just wants to kill her again and again and again. It's like he's a serial killer, but he's still trying to kill the same woman. Like, I don't know. Like it's just like he's stuck in a loop.
Yeah, definitely stuck in a loop. This then bleeds into Phoenix proceeding to bury Ruby,
Mm-hmm.
and his calling card as a serial killer is painting the corpses white.
Enter the color white.
Enter the color white, and I think I wanted to get into this, especially because you posited this earlier with the the shanty town earlier, the residents of the shanty town, and Alma painting her face white. I think, part of it is innocence. I think it's Phoenix understanding that these women didn't deserve what happened to them. Of being like, this is an innocent woman. I was forced to kill her. And also, once again, that psychosexual part of it of remembering Alma's innocence as a child and falling in love with her. I think that he may have, been sexually attracted to these women, but I think there's this that color white almost represents a romantic.
Right, right. Bringing Alma in and also purifying them, trying to purify them by painting them white.
Yes, the purification, which then leads into this dream sequence where I do believe it starts here, in which a goose flies out of the grave, which also begins to glow.
Mm.
Uh, and then it kind of cuts to a bedroom. You don't see who's in bed, but then we see Phoenix witnessing this elephant dying from his childhood and the blood spurting out of its nose. And then we cut to him becoming the elephant with blood pouring out of his nose.
Hmm.
And he's having a nightmare. And that's when we learn that Phoenix and Concha sleep in the same bed, wearing matching satin outfits with
Hmm.
ostrich feathers on the sleeves.
Yeah, both of them look fabulous.
Absolutely fabulous. I also want to go to bed in satin robes with ostrich feathers.
And you hear it too, like when he goes to get her robe, she's like, "Get me my robe. I want my breakfast." He's walking in heels because you hear the sound of the heels clicking on the floor.
Mm-hmm.
The thing that she says when she wakes up, "Wake up. You can't atone for your sins with your nightmares."
What a line.
Yeah.
What a line. You mentioned that this movie is feels like poetry, and this line, if that came across me in a poem, I would like put down the book that it is in and have to like take a moment. What a line. You can't atone for your sins with your nightmares.
Yeah.
Then Phoenix helps Concha with her every day as being her hands. Phoenix is not allowed to eat, but he picks up this like slice of white bread, to toasted white bread, to feed to Concha. And she wants to work on her concerto, so Phoenix has to be her hands, and she scolds him because he doesn't get it right.
He's got no
um
style, no feeling, or no style or something.
yeah, it was like no style, no feeling. He ends up playing, I believe, the song for Saint Lirio, and he has this like not a flashback. Well, he kind of has a flashback, but then it turns into like another nightmare. But he sees chickens eating arms, and then he's in like this warehouse where he is Jesus, and he is just completely being pelted by chickens.
Right, he's dressed in a loincloth. And I think he even has something encircling the top of his head, right?
Yeah, he has the crown of thorns, and he's been pierced in his side.
That's right. He does. And then chickens
And
are just pouring through the ceiling. There's chickens everywhere.
there's chickens everywhere. He's being pelted with chickens, and all I can say is that he's being pelted by cock. Just to add to a queer reading,
Okay.
as once again, the the queer child mother vibes going on. After they're done doing this routine at the piano, she turns to him and he turns to her, and they share a little kiss on the mouth.
Hmm. The kiss came as no surprise because, like, as you mentioned, when they were on stage together, he almost kisses her. But do you remember when he leans in and he says, she's saying, "And God created man," and he leans in, it looks like he's gonna kiss her, and he says, "And woman," whispers that into her ear.
Yes, yes, and woman.
Yeah.
Um, as they are Adam and Eve, but also he is would be Cain or Abel. There's a lot of
There's a lot.
there's a lot. There's a lot, but we then see that Phoenix idolizes Claude Rains as the Invisible Man.
Yes. There's a lot there too.
A lot there. he even dresses up as Claude Rains, full
Mhm.
bandages, and begins to make his own chemical experiments. But in in the Invisible Man, we see him try to become visible again.
Yes,
And Phoenix, on the other hand, is trying to become invisible.
that's right. That's right.
And, afterwards, we see Aladdin in the background helping him out. He looks in the mirror and sees that he is still visible and becomes extremely upset.
He spits at himself.
He spits at his own reflection,
Yeah.
um, because he himself is the invisible man to his mother.
Well, she says that. She says, nobody sees you. You don't, you're nothing without me. You're nothing without me. No one sees you. No one pays attention to you. And then she says, oh gosh, I don't know. I didn't write it down. Just like your hero. I think she says, just
Yeah.
like your hero. And then, yeah, enter the scene with him watching the Invisible Man, all dressed up, like mimicking the motions in the film. And then as the Invisible Man unwraps in the film, Phoenix is unwrapping right in tandem, in synchronicity. But I wanted to bring the nose back in because what we see is the Invisible Man take off his prosthetic nose and place it on the table in the film.
Hmm.
And it was only like I noticed, Ruby had said, I like your nose. I was like, I wonder what that's all about. And then I think it has this connection with the nose, like the fake nose of the
Hmm.
Invisible Man
Yeah. And the nose of the elephant.
and the nose of the elephant.
And the nose of the elephant is primarily where it makes its noise, where it has its voice. So I think that in part also can show how he is without a voice. After failing his experiment, his mother, Concha, calls him up the stairs so she can finish her knitting,
Hmm.
uh, stockings as a gift to Lirio.
Yeah.
Um, we cut away from that to him wearing all black and going out to the traveling apothecary.
Yeah, the mobile apothecary unit. I want one of those in my neighborhood.
I want one of those in my neighborhood too. Imagine how fun that would be. But there's this like perfectly normal woman with like no baggage who flirts heavily with Phoenix,
Totally crushing on him.
totally crushing on him, and then is like, "Oh, I want to know your experiments. I'll come over at 10:30." Like being like, "I'm going on a date with you, whether you like it or not."
Right. She's being very proactive about her attraction.
Very proactive about her attraction, but as he leaves the apothecary, that's when we see this like band move through with the statue of this big muscle woman, luchadora, and the symbolism here, the metaphor here is very blatant.
Mhm.
A giant python exits his pants, and he has to grapple with it. We eventually get to see the luchadora in action in the ring,
Mhm.
which is run by Dolores and the pimp from
Yeah.
earlier.
Mhm.
Eventually, we get to this showering scene where Phoenix, dressed as the magician again, goes and offers her a red rose. And we do get to see this woman who is very obviously a man wearing a breastplate
Mhm.
and dubbed over by a woman. And she's like, "Yeah, of course, hot stuff."
Mhm.
And this is a very comedic part of the movie. Not because, man dressed as woman is comedic, but, you know, I think she herself is very funny. He offers her a entire bottle of tequila,
Mhm.
um, and to go back to his house for a private theater session.
Mhm.
Um,
Wait,
and they go,
can I interject something? The
yes,
the luchador is known as the Saint. Just saying.
Yes, the Saint. Yes, from now on, we will be referring to her as the Saint,
Mm.
which, once again, Santa Sangre. Woo, sainthood. Metaphors are metaphors. I don't know. So they go back to his theater, and he's like, "I'm going to show you a performance where I will bring the dead back to life." I do want to point out that there is an unfortunate use of blackface in this film.
Oh yeah, I was wondering about that. Aladdin in blackface I had with a question mark and a cheetah print top. Like, what's happening there?
It's the quote unquote savage jungle man from
Oh.
Africa, which is very unfortunate. So, any black viewer, any black listener, if you do decide to watch this movie, proceed with caution.
Yeah. That does happen.
That does happen, but Saint, the Saint is in in a one person audience in this basement, and
You hear water dripping. It's like very subterranean.
yes. And at one point, Contra screams down to Phoenix, and he's like, ignore that, even though we can tell that the Saint had not heard anything. Phoenix gets up on stage, he pulls out a sarcophagus, and there's a mummy inside, and haha, a mummy? Mummy?
Oh my God, I totally didn't get that. Oh yeah. Mummy,
Especially because he produces his mom!
that's right. Instead of like it was supposed to be like a bunch of doves or something. Like something
Yeah,
white. Again, something
something
white.
white, 100 doves.
That's right.
And she orders her hands to kill her. But you know, the Saint is a luchadora, is this giant like muscle queen, and is able to like fight back against Phoenix.
Which is why he chose her. He was like, "You and your beautiful, strong body can fight me off." Like he says that, right?
Right? But unfortunately, he has a sword,
Mhm.
and
Wait, can I just say something? Can I just say something? Before he
yes,
finds the sword, he tells the saint to break his arms.
yes,
Break my arms. He offers them.
yeah, he offers them out and is like, "Break my arms" before attacking her, and she fights him off, and then grabs the sword and begins carving her. And end of the Saint. Right after he kills the Saint, we see Alma breaking into their house because earlier she had seen a sign for the Magic Hand show, and it was closed down, and some guy decided to give the address for Phoenix and Concha's place. And
Yeah.
so Alma breaks, and we get to see this house for exactly what it actually is, which is like
Mhm.
an abandoned and dilapidated building.
Right. And did you notice the music when she comes in? Like,
No.
music is so ominous and so dark, right?
Hmm.
And the music while Phoenix is killing the saint, it's like carousel music.
Yeah.
And I feel like the music kind of like tips us off as to their states of mind and their points of view.
Yeah. It, to this like circus that is uh Phoenix's mind, and Alma being able to see life for what it actually is.
Yeah.
Um but Alma begins to explore this abandoned house and eventually finds Concha's and Phoenix's bed, and there's something in it.
Mhm.
I wonder what it is. And there's curlers. You can see the curlers peeking out, and she lifts the blanket. She kind of gasps, puts the blanket down, and then goes over to a vanity and begins to paint her face white.
Yes. And that's the part where I was thinking about like, reality and surreality, like mixing, like when like her face is naked when she's living in the whorehouse with the painted lady. And then she discovers this bizarre situation and she paints her face again. Like she has a role to play.
Yeah, she has a role to play in almost being like a lead member of the chorus. There's always a few people in the Greek chorus that stand out and usher along the plot. And she's one of them. Aladdin is another. But she paints her face white. Phoenix then buries Saint, and this is where we get a couple of tarot cards.
Mm. Yes,
Um,
definitely do. Oh my gosh. Yes, we do.
we because every woman he has killed, and there's like 17 of them, rises from their graves in the tarot card Judgment,
Hmm.
named after Judgment Day. We, the dead is supposed to come back to life.
Mm.
And, we see all these women haunting Phoenix. They're all naked, but they have a bridal veil on.
That's right.
And out of one of the graves comes a giant white horse
Hmm.
with all of the tattooed woman's tattoos on it.
Oh, that's right. Yes.
And that's where we get the death card because death is seen on a white horse.
Oh, yes. Ooh, nice one. And I definitely thought about Judgment Card because they're all painted white. And they have, but the veil part is like a little, not a little confusing, like it's like they're brides, they would be brides, the killing of the bride. I don't know. I'm not sure I know much about that, but um why did you kill me? Why did you kill me? And he's like, Forgive me." Like he's all full of this regret, but he can't control himself. There's his like animal nature. That's this subversion of the animal nature. It's like you try to like contain, try to contain your primal self, or try to like, put it into a form that ultimately oppresses, which is colonialism. It comes out in like these in these strange ways, and these like oppression will breed, violence.
Yeah,
It's like it's innocent, we want to love him, but yet here are these dead women, the evidence of his subversion. I don't know what else, the evidence of his disturbance, you know.
yeah,
But ultimately, I think the disturbance is, due to his oppression, the oppression of his
yeah.
innocence. Like, I think maybe that was one of the things that the movie was trying to say.
Oh, 100%. And
Yeah.
with the bridal veils, I think to me it kind of feels like the Brides of Dracula.
Oh, I didn't get that. Tell me, what do you think? The Brides
Well,
of Oh,
I
you mean like, okay, okay, you mean like he's making his mate, but it's like he's failing, so he has to keep doing it or something? Like he's trying to make Alma?
it's like this possession. It's this how in Dracula, I think Phoenix kind of takes up this Dracula figure as well in his murder and this consumption of women. These are his these are his undead brides,
Right.
and they are hungry as well, and he has nowhere to put them, and unlike Dracula, Phoenix feels sorry. He feels shame for what he's done.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's the point I was trying to make about he's like he can't control his impulses.
Hmm. He re-enters the house, and the house is tilting back and forth, and we get to see the unmoored nature of Phoenix's mind until he sees Alma dressed
Yeah.
like she was at the funeral, with
Yes.
the black crown and the black dress and the white face, and everything is fine again. And they stare longingly at each other, and they share a little kiss
Hmm.
before Concha interrupts and orders him to kill her by cutting her arms off.
Hmm.
But Alma is not afraid of.
That's right. She offers her arms. She
Yeah,
offers.
she offers out her arms. She's not afraid because she knows the truth. It's in this dance that Phoenix becomes her arms again. Like through the other killings, he kind of is separate from Concha. But
Mm.
for this one, the attack on Alma, he is once again behind his mother as her arms and acting as Concha. And, they're fighting. Well, they're not fighting. And Alma's like, yeah, sure, whatever. But she's backing up and he's stalking her with Concha. And then the apothecary woman comes in and is like, hello, I'm here for our date. Oh no!
That was funny. That was like, and she's so normal. She's so regular. Like she comes in with this like hat, you know.
Yeah, she's like, is the straight man in this chaos. And she runs off. She calls the police. But we get to see Phoenix physically fighting back against Concha, who he stabs in the right below the ribs.
Yep.
She stumbles off and disappears. And you quoted her earlier saying, I will always be a part of you. I will always be inside of you.
Yeah, that's right. And he says to her, disappear. And then
Mm-hmm.
she says, like, I'm part of you. I'm in you.
It is at this point that we see the clowns again, enter the clowns once more to comfort Phoenix. And this part broke my heart. It's at this final realization because he didn't get to see, he saw his father's body, but he didn't see his mother's body as a child. It's at this point he realizes and he says, my mummy is dead,
Yeah.
and begins to cry. And the clowns get to comfort him. And we, as the audience, are, I don't know, I felt very moved by the moment.
Hmm.
What about you?
Oh, I was moved, but I have to admit, like maybe it's just a symptom of like my callous heart, but I was not moved to tears.
It's okay. I cry a lot.
Um, but I thought, it was like, that it's there that it all comes together. Like, oh, okay, she actually did die. He just blocked it out of his mind. Like that was the final trauma. Like that was the thing that sent him into a catatonic state. It was like a trauma that was too big for his mind
Yeah.
to handle at that moment in childhood. So he like, he went like catatonic the way we find him in the mental institution. And then as they slowly wake him up from his catatonia, he has to wrestle with like the distortions that his mind created so he could, just like bear this unbearable truth of his mother being dead. So he like created this whole fiction, so he could, I don't know, make it through the day.
Yeah.
Like we all
Including a physical manifestation in a puppet.
did. That's right. That's right. Because we find out what's under the blanket.
Is not her corpse like in Psycho it was Norman Bates' mother's corpse. In this case it's a puppet of her, to which the clowns help him move on from the death of his mother by throwing this puppet off of the stairs. And Alma picks up one of the candles from St. Lirio's fire and sets both St. Lirio and the mother on fire.
Yeah.
Uh,
The symbolic cleansing, right?
yeah, the symbolic cleansing through fire. The clowns also begin to dance around the fire. I think, we as the audience are meant to be like celebrating the death, like this death of the mother, the death of Catholicism, like this.
Right. They turn it into a celebration. That's right.
Mm-hmm. Alma also removes his red fingernails,
Mhm.
and the clowns eventually disappear, and Aladdin disappears, but not before Phoenix gives Aladdin a little kiss on the mouth.
Oh, that's right. Hmm.
We also get to see Alma do the hand bird again,
Hmm.
and she releases Phoenix, and Phoenix is finally free.
It's like the end of the movie. It's like Alma has rescued him and the fire cleanses him, exit the clowns. That's what I wrote.
Hmm.
And then exit Aladdin. And then Then we're left with Phoenix finally has Alma back. Alma's hands says, "You're free." So he's finally free,
Hmm.
only to be,
Only to be then arrested by the cops. The cops are outside. But in the final moments, exclaims, "My hands, my hands, my hands."
that's right.
Because he finally has autonomy. And we close out the movie with a quote from the Bible.
Oh, I
Uh,
didn't see that.
oh, yes, go watch it again.
Okay.
There's a quote that comes on the screen from Psalms 143.6, comma 8. So it skips line 7. But the quote is, "I stretch out my hands to thee. My soul thirsts for thee like a parched land. Teach me the way I should go, for to thee I lift up my soul." And that, my dear friends, is Santa Sangre. Any final thoughts about Santa Sangre?
Well, I really loved, I think there's more to think about in terms of like mental illness and
Mm-hmm.
yeah, mental illness as a haunting.
Yes.
Also, mental illness as a symptom of capitalism and colonialism.
Yes. 100%. I think that is at its core what this movie is trying to get at. It's, how like the quote, hurt people."
Mhm.
It's these systems that we live under hurt us, and so we hurt those that are dear to us because we are taught to do so, because it's a reaction to the horrors that we have to witness every day.
Yes. And the ultimate horror being colonialism. I don't know. I mean, just to go back to the beginning of the movie when he's being offered the food and he's in his animal nature and he refuses the plate with the white bread and will eat only like the fresh fish, and then they make him get into a suit and they make him like socialize, and that's where all the trouble begins. I just feel like there's so much to think about right there.
Exactly. There's just so much to think about, and for anyone listening who may have not watched the movie, we did our best to break everything down, but this movie really does deserve to be seen. The colors are gorgeous. The scenes are so symbolic. If you have a little over 2 hours to spare, I would highly suggest tracking it down. It's free on Tubi. That's how I watched it.
Mm.
Um, Unfortunately, there are commercials. So,
Internet Archive is a good source as well. And
oh, is it on Internet Archive?
yes, and I also want to say you want to watch it for the costumes. Really good.
Yes. It's really beautiful gowns, beautiful dresses, beautiful costumes. It's a spectacle. It's truly a spectacle. But, with that, I think I want to say thank you for coming on.
Well, thank you for having me. This was such a pleasure. This was such an honor. Thank you, Richard.
Absolutely. And for everyone else, thank you all for listening. I think it's time that I reveal next week's episode. So, next week, I want to bring up a more modern film. These last two that we've talked about came from the 80s. But I think I want to push it further ahead to about 2020, and I wanted to push the abstraction of the Greek chorus even further. So next week, please join me in watching Ari Aster's sophomore film, Midsommar. You can find it streaming a ton of places. I'm so excited. I still have Charlotte on screen with me. Do you want to say something about Midsommar?
I love it so much. I love that film. It's like there's so many great things about it. I'm just gonna say nothing because I don't want to spoil your next episode, but definitely watch it. It's like Lily, my daughter, who's like my greatest muse, she said, Mom, this is a great film. And I know that there are people who like hate Midsommar. It's like you either love it or you hate it. So I'm a lover. Love that film.
I I am also a lover of this film, and I'm going to absolutely gush next week about it. So, everyone, please go watch it and join me again. And with that, see you next week, and stay tuned for credits. Class is dismissed, and there's going to be a little bell ring.
Bing.
This podcast is researched, recorded, edited, and produced by me, Richard Berwind. You can find more of me on Instagram at Richard J. Boy. That's Richard J. Boii, or on Twitter at Berwind Richard. Though, if you voyaged away from Twitter, you can find me on Blue Sky at richardberwind.bsky.social. You can follow this podcast everywhere at Sinister Seminar, including Blue Sky, Twitter, and Instagram. Make sure to hit follow and leave a like, comment, and rating on your podcatcher of choice. Thank you for listening.